So pre-revenue does not always mean zero revenue. We are looking at what it actually takes to build next-gen nuclear power for the AI revolution today. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. It is June 4th, 2026, and we are unpacking the very first public quarter for X Energy, ticker XE.
Right. They just closed their $1.1 billion IPO in late April, and honestly, the fascinating part here is they pulled in $43.4 million in revenue this quarter without a single operational commercial plant.
Which is exactly what I wanted to ask you about. That top line is up over 100% from last year. How does a company actually do that? And before you answer, just a quick reminder that everything we talk about here is just our personal opinion and absolutely not financial advice. So please do not go buying a nuclear reactor based on our chat.
Let's hope not. Look, the short answer to the revenue is government money. Most of that top line is simply Department of Energy services and grants from their Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. The market reaction post-IPO has largely been about trying to digest how you even value this kind of hybrid government-backed R&D phase.
Right, because looking at the bottom line, it is a bit of a shock at first glance. The operating loss widened out to $66.1 million, and then the net loss was just massive, $166.2 million compared to like $10 million last year.
Yeah, but I was going to say, actually, that net loss is mostly noise.
Noise? $160 million is noise?
In this specific case, yes, it's $100.8 million of a non-cash mark-to-market accounting hit. Basically, they had a warrant exercise that triggered right before the IPO. So if you strip out that paper bomb, the real focus should be the operating expenses, which jumped to $109 million.
Which makes sense. I mean, they are aggressively scaling up. The CFO specifically said they are heavily accelerating construction and onboarding engineers right now. You kind of need smart people in the room to build a reactor.
You definitely do. You do not want to be optimizing for cheap labor on direct costs in this sector.
Totally. Speaking of the engineering side, I found this one detail from the CEO so incredibly cool. Instead of traditional fragile fuel rods, X Energy uses this Triso X fuel that literally looks like a billiard ball. Each one has roughly 19,000 tiny uranium kernels inside it.
Right, encapsulated in carbon and silicon carbide layers, so it is intrinsically safe from meltdowns. The DOE loves it. But honestly, the real moat they built this quarter is not just the physical fuel, it's the paperwork.
Wait, paperwork? You mean the licensing?
Exactly. They secured a Part 70 commercial fuel license from the NRC.
Oh, sorry, I have that right here. The very first one of those issued in over 50 years?
Yes, half a century. People underestimate how massive a barrier to entry that is for competitors. Plus, they bypassed a massive environmental impact statement for their Dow chemical project in Texas. They just secured a quick finding of no significant impact, a FONSI, unprecedented regulatory speed.
Okay, clearly the regulatory side is moving unusually fast. But how does all this early government funding actually hit their balance sheet?
That's where the accounting gets incredibly creative.
All right, let's get into the details then.
So when you look at a typical industrial company, revenue is just selling a product. But X Energy is doing something, actually, it's quite brilliant with this ARDP funding. They basically split the exact same government dollar into completely different buckets, depending on its purpose.
Meaning what? It shows up differently on the income statement versus the balance sheet?
Right, exactly. So the money funding their licensing work, that goes straight to the top line. That is where you get almost $40 million in services revenue. But the cash funding the physical construction of their TX-1 fuel facility, that is not revenue at all. They treat it as an offset against capital expenditures. So nearly $29 million just zeroes out their own build costs on paper.
Wow, so they're basically lowering the cost of their own factory. I mean, obviously it is real money, but visually it makes their CapEx look incredibly light compared to the actual steel going into the ground.
Yeah, it masks the true burn rate of a massive infrastructure build, which connects right back to what you mentioned about them aggressively scaling up. The CFO gave a very specific warning on the call about it. He essentially told analysts, quote, "I would not straight line that."
Oh, meaning we should not just take Q1 cash burn, multiply it by 4, and call it a finished model.
Precisely. They are deliberately redlining their spending this summer to get these facilities online.
Okay, but that brings up a bit of a contradiction, because if they're sprinting so fast, why did they just push back the permit submission for the big Amazon-backed project to 2027?
The Energy Northwest project, yeah, originally slated for 2026. But management is framing the delay as a strategic choice. They want to use it as a sort of a fast follower to their initial Dow project down in Texas.
Right. So let Dow absorb all the regulatory brain damage of the first NRC review and then just copy-paste the homework for Amazon.
That is a very Susie way to put it, but essentially, yes. They completely avoid repeating arguments with the NRC, and it aligns perfectly with their whole philosophy of offloading the hard parts. They fundamentally do not want to own these power plants.
Wait, back up. A nuclear energy company that does not want to own power plants?
Correct. And the CFO spelled this out beautifully. He stated, "Our business model is for our customers to be taking on the balance sheet risk associated with the construction of X-energy-related power plants."
So their exposure is literally just the intellectual property and the actual fuel.
Yes, their balance sheet risk is strictly limited to building the fuel manufacturing facilities. They own the IP, they fabricate those billiard ball fuel pebbles you mentioned earlier, and then Amazon or Dow holds the bag on the actual $10 billion concrete reactor site. It is the ultimate asset-light play in a very heavy industry.
That is just wild. They are selling the ultimate picks and shovels, except the picks are, highly enriched nuclear tech. But wait, if they are completely reliant on selling fuel to make the economics work, do they actually have enough raw material? Because I thought the domestic supply chain for that was practically non-existent.
And there is the critical bottleneck. HALE, high-assay, low-enriched uranium. The CEO was very proud that they secured about 7.5 tons directly from the Department of Energy for the Dow units, but he casually noted they still need to identify another 3.5 tons in the coming months.
Yeah, identify, that is a very gentle corporate word for we need to find it fast.
Exactly. And domestic enrichment is still playing catch-up. They are engaged with enrichers in the U.S. and the UK, but if those facilities do not scale aggressively by the early 2030s, well, the entire asset-light growth model just starves. You cannot run a fuel company without the raw fuel.
Okay, so that is a glaring single point of failure. It feels like they build this beautiful, perfect paper model, but we still have no idea if anyone actually has enough gas to run it.
Basically, yes, it's an elegant machine completely dependent on a very brittle supply chain.
Well, taking a step back then, how should we really be thinking about their long-term trajectory? Because one minute they look invincible, breaking 50-year regulatory droughts, and the next they're quietly sweating over uranium supply.
I think you just defined the exact reality of being a first mover. It is equal parts brilliant and totally terrifying.
Fair. Very fair.
But looking ahead, their trajectory really comes down to a massive timeline race. Yes, they are sitting on roughly $2 billion in liquidity if you count the IPO proceeds, which is great, except the CFO practically begged everyone not to assume flat cash burn. They are actively accelerating their spending into Q2.
And they kind of have to, right? Because that huge government RDP agreement, the current budget period for that actually expires in August 2026. So if they do not negotiate an extension before then, their whole capital pool suddenly gets very shallow.
Right, exactly. So they need constant proof of momentum to keep the market and the politicians happy. And management clearly knows this. They actually guided us to expect an entirely new 1 gigawatt customer project announcement sometime later in 2026.
Okay, so that is the big commercial catalyst we're watching for.
That, and we need to watch for the Dow Seadrift final construction permit. They anticipate getting that by Q1 of 2027. If that Dow permit slips, the Amazon project automatically slips too, since Amazon is designed to just fast follow.
Yeah, that is a huge domino effect. But I will say, despite all those risks, the tone for management was just incredibly upbeat. The CEO actually said, quote, "I have never harbored as much enthusiasm for the possibilities of what is happening as I do today." I mean, a nuclear CEO publicly praising government regulators is basically unheard of.
Unheard of and usually a bit dangerous. But look, we have to give credit where it is due here. They are genuinely opening doors that have been nailed shut for half a century. The execution is real, even if the financial model is still highly experimental.
Experimental is definitely a very polite way to say extremely expensive. But it's going to be a wild year watching them try to pull it off. All right, I think that's all we have for today, Miro. Maybe go grab that second coffee now.
Already brewing it in my head. See you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us. Just a quick note before we close out. If you want these teardowns to naturally show up in your feed, you can just go ahead and follow the show. Also, in the spirit of transparency, we do use AI behind the scenes to help us scan through all those massive 100-page SEC filings. We'd love to hear what you want covered next, so drop us a ticker request at earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or find our X link in the show notes.
Catch you later.